Today's March 19th, 2025. As a preliminary matter, this is Woody Knight, Chair of the Planning Board. Please permit me to confirm that all members in person anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Planning Board members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Peter Pecos,
Yes, sir.
Larry Murphy,
Present.
Mary Stone. I don't see Mary. Okay. Scott Kenter
Yes, sir.
and Steve Mangian.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Town staff, when we call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Kristen Grubbs, Planning Director,
Yes.
and Dan LaRoe, Assistant Planner.
Yes.
Hello. Good evening. March 19th, 2025. Open meeting of the Newbury Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, which extends Governor's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A-20, until March 31st, 2025. For this meeting, the Newbury Planning Board is convening by video conference via Zoom, as posted on the Planning Board's agenda, which can be found on the town's website. You may join us by going to http://zoom.us and entering meeting ID number 832-7141-3056, passcode 108790, or by calling 1-929-205-6099 US.
Hey, I'm on.
Michael.
I'm sorry, if you're just joining in, just please push mute if you have any background noise, okay? I apologize. It makes it difficult for everyone to hear. And entering meeting ID number and passcode when prompted. For Zoom meetings, please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video and or telephone conference. The meeting is also broadcast live through local access channel 9 on Zoom and at www.tnctv.org. And the recording will be available on the Newbury Access YouTube channel. Meeting business ground rules. Before we turn the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. As chair, I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. After speakers conclude their remarks, I'll go down the list of board members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. The meeting tonight does not include any public hearings. However, the board members have spoken. Excuse me. However, after the board members have spoken, I will afford the public an opportunity to comment and or ask questions. I will seek questions and comments through the Zoom raised hand function in the order in which the people click on the raised hand button. Finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So there's a preamble out of the way. First item on the agenda this evening. We have Massachusetts, we have an application and submittal. Massachusetts Housing Opportunities Corporation, MHOC LLC. Submission of a definitive plan, level 2 site plan review using section 97-4G MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District for a proposed 44-unit multifamily development located on the 10.5 acre parcel at 34 Central Street, Assessors Map R19, Lot 19. Owner Melody and Robert Pritchard. I'd like to welcome Michael Lavas, MHOC LLC, Gerald Welch, MHOC LLC, and Kristen Smith, the architect. Are you guys all present?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. If one of you would like to present your project to the planning board?
Absolutely. And just for clarification, Mr. Chairman, I'm actually the engineer, not the architect, but that's perfectly fine.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry about
And
that.
Kristen, I have to ask, I was just going to use the site plan B and the architect's site plan, if that's something you can share. As you indicated earlier, I'm not sure if I'm going to be allowed to share screen.
Yes, I
Give
will,
us 1 second. 1 second.
I will get it down. Get it up. Okay, tell me the name of them, Christian, sorry.
So in the plan set, the site plan B would be, I believe, sheet 6.
Can you see it?
There we go. Yep. Next, I think 2 more sheets. Because I wanted to show the board the plan that had the grading and drainage shown on it. 1 more. Perfect. Yes, that's it. Okay, good evening, members of the board. Again, Christian Smith. I'm an engineer with Beals Associates, representing the applicants on this project. Just to reiterate, we're talking about the property at 34 Central Street. You can see it is very close to the intersection of Central Court. The project, as previously mentioned, proposes 4 plexes and 5 plexes, and a couple of 3 plexes with entrance right at the, well, probably 150 feet from the intersection of Central Court and Central Street. Thank you. And as you come in, we do have a couple of features. We are proposing driving in, it would be on the left side of the road or the south side of the travel lane, a school bus stop structure. And that was one thing we wanted to discuss with the board in particular, because it does not meet the parent parcel setback, and that structure would have a roof. It is 3-sided, but it does have a roof on it. So we wanted to know if that would be allowed, if that requires a waiver of some sort. On the right-hand side coming in, there is a proposed mail kiosk, as well as just beyond that, the sediment forebay upstream of one of the 2 bioretention ponds proposed. Then we drive in, and as you start to round the initial bend, close to where the intersection is, we are proposing down behind that system of units, 3 areas for a potential community garden area. You can see we propose a walkway or a walking path, which will not actually be constructed in any way. It is simply going to be a passive recreation walking path that would go through the woods, and there are existing roads out there, and basically there will just either be placards hung on trees or something of that nature to delineate that. On the area you're seeing, you see the proposed EnviroSeptic leach field layout, as well as a small dog park. And then if we can just pan down a little bit, off to the right-hand side, you will see the other rather large bioretention area with the sediment forebay upstream of that. This project is proposed with a 24-foot wide paved way, 5-foot sidewalks, and granite curbing. In addition to the larger drainage treatment and infiltration features that I pointed out, behind building 5 and 6, there are some drip edge trenches. Go back down just a little bit. So if you go, and there's no stationing on this, unfortunately, but so just let plan view left, you'll see 5, 1, 2, and 3. And that's what the hatched rectangle is out behind that building, and similarly out in behind Unit 6-1. And so they obviously, based on the curbing, there will be a closed drainage system. There will be a sewer collection system, one small pump station up just street side of Unit 3-1, which will convey that up to the septic tanks upstream and ahead of the septic receiving area. And the entire roadway is approximately just over 1,250 linear feet. And we do have two small just parks, but they will just be grassed areas that will be considered, relatively, or graded relatively level, so that people can take their kids out there and play in those grassed areas. So we think we've taken a good deal, if not everything, in the suggestions that were given to us at our preliminary meeting with the department heads, and implemented it into this design. I'm sorry, was someone asking a question? Oh, no, I must be hearing things. I apologize. We have also provided, obviously, a full drainage evaluation, which will be readied and obviously submitted for MDEP permitting. And we have submitted a fiscal analysis, as well as a traffic analysis prepared by Vanessa and Associates. The architectural plans, which we have submitted with part of this application, show basically the elevations of the buildings, the floor plans, and a site plan as they lay it out, so you can kind of see which type of unit is in each location. And I think beyond that, we have an environmental impact assessment that is underway as we speak. Our environmental consultant, Norse Environmental, is preparing that, as well as I believe they've submitted application to the Conservation Commission at this time, for their initial hearing and ANRAD for the small wetland area, which is on the northeasterly side of the property. And just to give everybody a picture of that wetland, it is essentially just an area that was historically overdug. In speaking with Maureen at Norse Environmental, she indicates that this is virtually devoid of function and value as far as habitat goes, and largely what was in and around there prior to this, or existing, were chicken coops, when this was a rather large scale chicken and egg facility or farm. And I think by and large, we've tried to accommodate all of the requests at that pre-meeting, as I mentioned. I believe we've covered everything that is required in the MBTA zoning, and met the underlying zoning as appropriate with this proposed development. The max height on the houses are going to be, will not exceed 2.5 stories. And beyond that, as required, 50% of the property will be placed into open space under easement. We do not have yet a determination whether that will be solely controlled by the condominium association, or whether that will be, policed by the Conservation Commission. But in any event, those are details that we will certainly iron out as we move forward. I think with that, I will turn it over to the planner and the board for any questions.
Okay. Does anyone from the board have any questions?
Oh, Woody,
Peter?
of course. Yes. First off, Christian, thanks very much for your presentation, and appreciate this organization pulling something like this together for our community as being the first MBTA project, and also with some affordable housing, which I'm a very strong proponent of, and you'll learn that as we continue our discussions going down the road. I had an opportunity today just to kind of look at the set plan, the plan sets a couple times, and I actually went down on Central Street and Central Court, and just kind of stood around and looked at design and sort of things. And I'll express before we even start, I'll have a concern with the entrance of the roadway, just because when you stand at that corner and you just watch the traffic, and I looked at the traffic survey, and we don't need to start the discussion now. I would just have concerns about how that opens. And I know there's a wetland that goes over Central Court, and I don't know if 1, 2, and 3 buildings, 1, 1, 1, 2, and 1, 3
Yep.
can be pivoted or in some way altered as to where they're sitting to allow for maybe a different type of entrance in and out of this this proposal. I know it's something weird to throw at you, but I'll be coming at you with it later. So if it's on your notepad now, you'll know where.
Absolutely, and I am certainly taking notes, Mr. Pecos.
Yeah.
So,
And I think traffic mitigation is going to be a big thing here. When we went into helping design the concept of the setbacks and everything, we're really very attuned to the environment of the neighborhood and trying to protect the interest of the abutters, and that goes onto that roadway too. So I think that might be something just to think about. And I love the idea of open space. This community is a big proponent of that, and so we look forward to talking down the road and seeing where things go. But this looks like a very robust project.
yeah, I appreciate that, and we will certainly take those comments under advisement, and we will review them with our traffic consultant and see what recommendations they might be able to make.
Thank you. Thanks, Woody.
Okay, Larry, do you have any questions?
No, I don't think so at this point, Woody. I'm looking forward to seeing how this progresses and
Thank you, Larry.
nothing further at this point.
Okay, thank you. Scott, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just one question I may have misheard, but and thank you so much, Christian, for the presentation. But did you mention a sewer pump station?
Yeah, it's a very small sewer pump station, and it just takes the effluent from the first 3 buildings as you drive in, both left and right. And the reason for that is, Mr. Kinter, excuse me, I almost called you Kittner, is that those are so much lower than the rest of the project, and that bit of effluent will have to be pumped up to the septic settling tanks prior to going to the leach fields. And Kristen, I'm not sure if you can point it out, but it is a collection tank and pump station between unit 2.3 and 3.1 up near the road. Yep, keep going right there. Yep, that's the tank, and the round is the pump station. So there'll be a settling tank upslope of the pump station. The pump station will then pump the gray water up to the next set of septic tanks and settling tanks, which are just off page on the bottom. Right there. Yep, there are 2 in a row. I think those are, I can't recall if it's 3,000 or 4,000 gallon tanks.
Okay, and do you plan to have an emergency generator for the pump station?
Almost definitely. I don't know that that's been determined for certain, but it would certainly come highly recommended from myself.
Okay. All right. I don't have any more questions, Woody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Steve, do you have any questions?
Thanks. I had to unmute Woody. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It seems pretty exciting, and I think it'll be good to be working with the other members of the board on this. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And as chair, I'd like to say welcome, and I appreciate your presentation. And one of my biggest concerns that I see so far in the beginning, because this is the beginning, is that where the road goes out to Central Street. a sensitive area, there's traffic there. And anything through further discussions in the future and anything we can do to maybe make that a safer exit and entrance would be great.
Absolutely. And Mr. Chairman, there are, certain things that can be done that may be warranted, though they weren't, necessarily tripping the threshold as far as the AASHTO design criteria, but, things such as deceleration lanes, things of that nature that can get right turning vehicles off the travel way prior to, the entrance into the property. But again, I will take that under advisement, just as the other member had mentioned, and we will review that and discuss that with our traffic engineers at Vanessa.
In Central Court, it's tricky as it is now with the angle in which it meets Central Street. So I would appreciate that consideration. And I also think it's a great idea to have the bus stop. So if we can work together and figure out if that's a good place to put it and it's acceptable, it would be great, because I think a bus stop there would be great. So,
Well, yeah, and I appreciate that sentiment, because, we were looking at it and was like, well, we do get rain, we get snow here. I think it would be nice for the kids to have a roof over their head while they were waiting for those buses.
okay, great. So now the next step, if no one else has any questions from the board, Kristen or Daniel, do you have anything to add? Do you need to add anything? Before I move on?
Not at this time.
Okay,
No, I think the submission included all of the materials that we require, and they'll be processed at our end, so we can move forward into setting a public hearing date.
okay. So with that said, thank you, Kristen. I would entertain a motion to accept the application for 34 Central Street. And then after that motion and second,
I'll make that motion.
we'll set a date for public hearing.
Woody, you've got a raised hand
Um,
from Kathleen.
Okay, I was not going to have public comment this evening. We're not in a public hearing. There'll be plenty of opportunity for the public to participate in this as it goes on. So if Kathleen, if you don't mind, we won't take any public comment tonight, and
Okay,
we
you
will-
had, you had previously said you were gonna take some public comment. That's why I raised my hand. But I just have one thing. As Mr. Paco said, if someone could just go stand on Central Court at the end by the Scuteri property, which is already flooding, that would be great. And then we'll come back with many questions at the public hearing. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Kathleen. I look forward to everybody's input in the future.
I think Scott made a motion.
Yes.
Scott, yes, Scott, motion, and we have a second?
Absolutely.
Okay, motion and second to accept the application. Roll call vote. Peter,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes,
Scott,
Yes.
and Steve,
Yes,
and chair votes yes as well. So, Kristen, a good date to start this public hearing. We're gonna need a little bit of time, so it won't be in 2 weeks, it will be in 4 weeks.
Yeah, we need to run a legal ad for a couple weeks, so
Yeah, it takes time, yeah. What is the date 4 weeks from now?
it's April 16th.
Okay,
Would be the soonest we could
All right.
open it.
and if that's all right with the applicant, I would entertain a motion
Yes,
to
sir.
set a public hearing date for this matter, 34 Central Street.
Woody, I'd be
But-
happy to make the motion, and considering that we're in the land of Zoom, I would hope that we would continue this meeting in that venue. However, if the legislation does not allow that to take place, then I think we'd have to transition to an in-person.
Thank you for that, adding that, Pete, and that would be on April 16th.
Yes.
So thank you for the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Peter,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes,
Scott,
Yes.
and Steve, how do you feel?
I'm good about it.
Okay, and as chair, I vote yes as well. So thank you, Christian.
Thank you, sir.
everyone else,
Thank you.
and we'll see you on
And
the
thanks to all
16th.
the members as well as the planning staff, and we're very much looking forward to working with you on this.
Okay, thank you so much, and have a
Thank
great
you.
evening.
You as well.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Okay, moving on to the next thing on the agenda. We have new business. 100 High Road. Assessors map R34, lot 21. This is an informal discussion regarding a subdivision proposal. Before I welcome Tom Neve, I would just like to say I'm going to recuse myself from this matter. Peter's going to take over for this discussion. But welcome, Tom, and I'll see you when this matter's over.
Thank you.
So Tom, why don't you just give us a little overview of what your concepts are here so that we can have an appreciation?
I'd be happy to. Members of the planning board, Kristen, Daniel, for your record, my name is Thomas Nevey. I am a civil environmental engineer and a registered land surveyor. And I've been operating as a private consultant since 1982 out of Topsfield for 35 years, and I'm semi-retired at this point. And my company has assumed a new name in Danvers. It's the Moore and Cameron Group, and they'll actually, if we move forward with this development, they'll actually be our engineers of record. But I did have the opportunity to meet with Christian and Daniel, and I appreciate that. I did have an opportunity to review your zoning bylaw and subdivision regulations, and I've come up with some ideas. I'm the owner of the property, and it's a beautiful piece of land. It's small. I'm sure you all know where it is. It's on 100 High Road. It's 3.82 acres, around 166,000 square feet, and it's been used primarily as a barn with a few horses and 2 big hay fields. So our ideas were to come up with some schemes and discuss them with you, and in hopes to get some input and to formulate a path that might be acceptable to the planning board in moving forward. So I've submitted 5 plans for you and hopefully have them in your packet. I don't know if we'll be able to put them up, but that's helpful. But if not, I'll direct you to the packet that you have. It should have 5 plans in it. The first plan is a small schematic. I title it Conventional Subdivision Layout.
Tom, I can bring it up for you. So just,
Oh, wonderful.
just tell me where to go.
Okay, it's after my narrative, and it should be the first plan. That one right there. And it's titled Plan Number 1, and it's a conventional subdivision layout. The property is highlighted in yellow, and the roadway has been designed according to your schematic, widthwise and cul-de-sac size. And it shows 3 lots, 2 40,000 square foot lots and 1 51,000 square foot lot, and the proper roundings at High Road. That is pretty simple, and that would be a conventional subdivision. Moving on, if we could, to the second plan. I got the impression that town is very sensitive to open space and tries to promote open space in as many developments as you can. So what we've done in the second plan is we've used your OSRD bylaw with lots 1 and 2 having 50 feet of frontage on High Road, and lot 1 having a conventional frontage, and that lot would be a 40,000 square foot lot. I totally recognize that your bylaw indicates that the OSRD in the current form needs to have 3 lots or more. It's under review now with the warrant article, I believe, at your upcoming town meeting to possibly discuss that and maybe move it down to 2 lots. Of course, you know, if you just had it available to all subdivisions, that may simplify matters, but that's the business of the town, and we certainly would default to that once that situation is resolved. But this plan shows open space surrounding the property, and what is not highlighted in green would be the developable portions of lots 1, 2, and 3. And the sizes of those lots, you can see lot 2 and 3 exceed 60,000 square feet, and lot 1 would be a conventional 40,000 square foot lot. So, and moving on to plan number 3. This is a plan that shows the 3-lot subdivision. If your bylaw stays the way it is, we would have to include lot 1 in the OSRD. And in doing so, we would have to provide additional open space because now that lot would be part of the total land area. And it would still remain at 40,000 square feet. Lot 2 and 3 would still have the same amount of area, but the open space would increase according to your bylaw. So this plan would conform to the OSRD requirements. And moving on to plan number 4. This is a conventional subdivision plan, and what was important for me to demonstrate to you tonight is if we were asked not to consider the OSRD, but to consider a conventional subdivision, this is a sketch which shows that we could conform in all respects to your conventional subdivision regulations, not requiring any waivers from the planning board rules and regulations. And then we would be creating 3 lots. 2 of them would be 40,000 square feet. Lot number 3 would be 51,000 square feet. There would be no open space. And I failed to indicate to you, you probably know the property, but there are no wetlands on the land. So no part of the entire parcel is wet or considered wetlands under the Wetlands Protection Act. So these lots would all have the square footage shown on the plan is the upland portion and the total upland portion of the land. The last plan I indicate as plan number 5. And Kristen, if you can move to plan number 5, it's the next one up. There we go. This is the conventional subdivision layout. And what I've done is, I think it makes a lot of sense to not build a road of substantial size and volume, but to consider building the layout and dedication, of course, because we'd need that in order to create frontage, and then request a special permit for the construction of a common driveway. Lot number 1 would have frontage on High Road. It would be a 40,000 square foot lot. It would conform to zoning, and that could be removed from the land with an A&R plan. And lot number 2 and 3 could be serviced by a common driveway. The roadway dedication would formulate the frontage for those lots, and we would then produce a lot of 40,000 square feet and 51,000 square feet respectively. This idea came to mind for a number of reasons. My specialty is environmental engineering, and I've been involved in a lot of projects within central Essex County and northern Essex County in particular, literally thousands of subdivisions. I've been involved in affordable housing projects, mostly residential subdivisions, and also worked quite handily with green type projects, projects that were actually donated to Greenbelt as a matter of large parcels that my clients would be interested in developing a substantial tax deductible contribution. And so, I've been involved in so many different varieties of subdivisions that we always look at the land and try not to manufacture anything that would be unnatural to the terrain and unnatural to the properties of the neighborhood. So this plan, to me, rises to that level, and I would appreciate your comments on it, because I think it would allow the subdivision to be built, allow the land to be divided. The lots would be, of substantial size, but the impact on the property itself would be minimal. There is an existing driveway that comes from High Road, which traverses along the northern boundary of our neighbor, and actually is used primarily for access to the barn. And you might see that as a dashed line right up against the boundary line. So, that's been the access to the farm for many years, and this would be offset from that a bit, but it would be consistent with the access that the farm had. The common driveway could be built, certainly have to be built in accordance with your criteria for common driveways, and I think that would be our best effort moving forward. But I wanted to bring the other options to you for your, for your input and advice. You might, and there's one more plan that I had submitted. I had referenced the Knights Court subdivision in my narrative, but I failed to produce the plan originally with my narrative. So I subsequently have sent it to Kristen. And you might notice on that plan that the planning board did allow a roadway similar to the schematic that I have on plan number 5, and did allow a common driveway to be accessed to those 2 lots. And it's right next door. It abuts us. And I think it would be consistent with that. It would be much less impacting. This driveway is so much shorter. And I think the impact that the driveway would have on the road would be a bit more than the existing driveway to the barn, but not a whole lot more. So, Mr. Chairman, that ends my presentation. I appreciate any feedback that I could get from the board, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Thomas. What I'll do is I'll ask board members if they have any question, and then staff, and then I'll make a couple comments. So first, Larry, do you have any questions at this time?
Yeah, just on the OSRD plans. I mean, you're right. We do as a board, I think, tend to favor that. I'm not sure that this particular project that there's much advantage to an OSRD from the point of view of the public interest of future owners. But it looks like one plan, you've got 63,000 plus square feet of open space, and the other, it looks like about 83,000. Is that, am I reading this correctly?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, and they, I mean, as a practical matter, I don't think that would be open space that would be available to the public. The other thing is, wouldn't you need a frontage variance for the back 2 lots from the ZBA?
Not in the, you mean in the OSRD?
Yeah.
No, because you allow the reduction in frontage to a minimum lot frontage of 50 feet.
Oh, okay. All right.
So we would have 50 feet along High Road for both those lots.
Yeah, I mean, I would keep an open mind, certainly, but I kind of gravitate more to the conventional subdivision.
Well, in my discussions with Daniel and Kristen, we all came to the same conclusion that you certainly try to create open space where the public can use it. You create open space where you can link it with other green space that might exist, and something that might be an attribute to the community or an attribute to the direct neighborhood. And I agree with you. I didn't see any real benefit to creating an OSRD on this parcel, simply because it didn't have those attributes. And I think it's obvious that that's a main concern of the town, and that's what you shoot for in most of these.
Thank you.
All set, Larry?
Yeah, I think so.
Beautiful, thank you. Scott, any questions or comments at this time?
Yeah, and great presentation, Thomas. Really appreciate you coming. And I'm with Larry. I don't see I guess Kristen, Daniel, and you. There's just doesn't seem to be a lot of benefit to the town and the OSRD front. But could you just speak a little bit more to? I'm not sure if it was plan number 5. It was just the common driveway for the 2 lots.
Sure, I'd be glad to. The outlying description would be the dedication of the roadway. So we would have to create what some might refer to as a paper street, but create a roadway that is consistent with the subdivision rules and regulations. It would create the dedication of the road. It would have roundings. It would be of proper width. It would have the proper cul-de-sac. And in that subdivision submittal, we would then ask for waivers from the planning board on the construction of the road in lieu of building a common driveway in accordance with the requirements of a common driveway. And if it's well received by the board, then we would simply leave the dedication where it is. It would be a private road. It would not be maintained by the town, and it would be serviced. It would service only those 2 lots, and it would be serviced by a common driveway.
All right, Larry. Pete, I don't have any more questions.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Steve, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
Yeah, I would just say that at this time, I share the discussion about open space and whether it would really do much for the community, given the layout that's being proposed. But I don't see open space as a high priority at this time for this proposal. But it'll be interesting to work with it again. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I'm going to turn to staff. Kristen, do you want to go first? Any comments or questions?
No, I don't. I guess my comment, well, I have one comment. My comment regarding open space that we did talk about when Tom and Daniel and I met was that the property abuts Tendercrop Farm and, has a agricultural history, as does a lot of High Road and these parts of town. Not too many generations back, I believe this property is not currently in agricultural use, but that, I guess, just when you read the OSRD bylaw and you think about what the natural resources are on this parcel, those are the values, if you look at habitat or forest or, other natural resource values, the values that this parcel has is the agricultural use as a potential. It's not currently active. It doesn't necessarily translate to future development in any way, but I would just say in terms of using the OSRD bylaw to think about the intent, the purposes of that bylaw are to preserve the natural resource values that are most pertinent to this particular site. So, that would be the question that would be asked if one, I think, were to look at OSRD. It's not necessarily to buffer the neighborhood or, you know, provide scenic value. It could potentially be to enhance the agricultural use that, you know, if they're prime soils. I haven't looked at any of that, but those would be the questions I would have. But again, I think it may not be appropriate for the intended, you know, subdivision plans in this case.
Well, Pete, if I may, I have a follow-up. Tom, how would the OSRD affect the structure placement on lots 2 and 3?
Well, in each case, the open space is shown in green, and the structures would be put on what's not green. So you could see the lots, the way they're set up. There would be structures that would be, you know, reasonably close together, and then the open space would surround them. And
Yeah, I didn't ask the question very well. Maybe a better way to put it would be, if you just go with the conventional subdivision, is that going to cause you to place the homes somewhere else in the lot, like within the area highlighted in green?
you know, not really, because if you look at the common driveway layout, I pretty much put on there the location of where it would be. And of course, this is in a preliminary way at this point, but at the fork, we show a turnout, and, you know, I used the same dimensional criteria as was used on Knight's Court for a turnout for emergency vehicles and whatnot. And then from the end of the turnout in both directions, we go to the house site. So, you know, the house site would sit, you know, relatively close to the dedication, simply because the dedication isn't a road, it's not built. So it would still provide space between the driveway and the front of the house. So there'd be no reason to put the house any further back than the ends of those driveways.
Okay, I think that answers my question. And lot 1 already has a house on it, right? And that's
Lot 1 already has a house. You could see it if you look closely. There's a house, there's a pool area, and there's the barn. So we do have somebody interested, their horse folks. We could easily see that being used with a small paddock out back beyond the barn, and, you know, maybe to house 1 or 2 horses for their own personal use. But that would that's the way I'm encouraging that lot to be used.
And would that lot have direct access onto High Road, or would it come off the culvert?
No, it would have direct access from High Road. If you look close to it, looking at High Road, looking at the front of the house, the driveway is on the right side of it. And you can see it accesses actually a 2-stall garage, which is on the right side of the house, and it goes directly out onto High Road. So it wouldn't be in conflict with either the road or the common driveway.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Dan, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
No, thank you, Pete. I appreciate it.
Cool. So Tom, thank you very much for coming together with some concepts. And I think you've heard kind of the majority of the board's feeling on the OSRD, and, you know, that whether it's 2 or 3 will kind of be directed by what takes place at our town meeting, which will be the end of April. Have you done any perking yet?
No, we have perk tests scheduled for the first week in April. And we've looked at the USDA soil maps, and the land is quite deeply drained. So we don't anticipate any problems doing perk tests for only 2 lots in this case.
Okay. We'll see what that looks like. Hey, are there fire hydrants nearby on this area?
The
fire hydrants?
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm not sure exactly where the hydrant is on the road, but there is town water on High Road. It's on the opposite side of the street. We would, I don't think that we would bring town water into the project. I think the lots are of sufficient size that we would drill wells and have on-site septic disposal and, just try to minimize the, those types of construction requirements.
Because the next place I'll go with this, Tom, is safety, public safety. Because I'm a big public safety guy, and I always have concerns about fire apparatus,
Okay,
multiple vehicles having to show up, especially if there's limited hydrant pressure for whatever reason, and you get 2 trucks and a tanker. If that was the case, a common driveway would be a concern for me.
well, that's why we have that turnout, and we certainly can make it of sufficient size and width to accommodate whatever the fire department might recommend. But, we're in such a preliminary way.
Yeah,
I think I think the width of the common driveway in your regulations is 15 feet wide. I would actually propose something wider. I think I did a small development here where I live in West Newbury, and we have a common driveway with, I actually built the road and built the common driveway, and it's 20 feet wide. And, I'm not looking to minimize, in one respect, I'm looking to minimize the impact of the land by not having to build a full blown subdivision roadway with 130-foot paved circle. But it also, I think the common driveway width could be wider and probably would serve the 2 lots and this area a lot better. So I might, if it goes down that route, actually ask you to make that a wider road, maybe 20 feet paved, allow for 2 vehicles to pass and give a substantial effort down below where the turnout is as well. I talked to the fire department and come up with the proper type of T down below for emergency vehicles and staging and whatnot. And again, it's a hayfield. There's no trees. It's not a wooded site by any means. So these kinds of things can easily be built into the infrastructure to provide as much safety as the fire department would deem necessary.
Sure, I understand. And what is that length back to that to where the homes would be? Is that about 350 feet, or is that a little bit more?
You're probably about right. I didn't really measure it, but it's not. I would think that's fair.
Okay, because if you hit the 500 foot, you're gonna there'll be a different threshold. Yeah, right.
No, we're way short of that.
Yeah, it looks shorter. Okay, cool.
And if I haven't, I've been doing this for a long time, and I think the best laid plan is that common driveway plan. I don't see where the open space provides as much of a public benefit or even a benefit to the neighborhood directly. And I'm really looking to minimize the impact that this development would have on the land by not building a large cul-de-sac. It doesn't make any sense to do a conventional subdivision. One of my sketches does suggest that we could do a conventional subdivision without any waivers, but I really believe that's not the appropriate thing to do for such a small effort like this. So I hope that you're getting the impression from me that I would prefer to build a common driveway, and maybe at this point you're not ready to comment on it. But I'd be happy to come back at your next meeting with more appropriate plans, with some grading plans and something that I could visit with the fire department and maybe come up with something that might work a little bit better for the town, and then present that to you at your next meeting if that.
So I think maybe at this point, Tom, I'd have you work with staff to talk about things. It's not we don't tell you what to do. You bring a plan to us and we say, yes, it makes sense, or it doesn't make sense. And so I appreciate the conversation we're having now. But I think, the next steps, you're going to perk, you're going to find out what works, what doesn't work. You'll have more information. You have an opportunity to kind of feel where we've been at, and you can work with this through staff. So we look forward to when you come back after that.
Well, does anybody, I really don't know where the consensus is of the board. Do you have any particular consensus at this point?
So you want to
Share
push,
with me.
you want to push the question of a straw poll of a driveway versus the,
Well, I kind of brought some schematics, and if there's any one that you're leaning toward, then I can elaborate a little bit more on it. If there's any that you would not be the least bit interested, then we can set those aside.
Larry, what would you like to do, my friend?
Well, I mean, we haven't had any input. I wouldn't want to commit to anything, let's put it that way. As I previously expressed, I don't really see the OSRD as having any particular public or private benefit. I mean, even if you go the OSRD route, that open space is just going to become the backyard for the, for the structures on lots 2 and 3. As far as the common driveway goes, it may make perfect sense. My initial reaction to that suggestion was it's maybe not a precedent we want to set, but apparently that's already been set on Knight's Court. And you make a good case for why that might be preferable over definitive subdivision, standard subdivision road construction. But we haven't heard from public safety. We haven't heard from our peer review engineer. That's about as much direction as I can give you at this point.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Scott, anything additional from you?
I think Larry said it very nicely, but it's great real estate, Tom, and appreciate you coming in. I think you'll be back and we'll get it figured out.
Well, what I was suggesting to do at this point, and I might just throw this out, but I didn't want to be presumptuous by any means, but I like to try to get the neighbors involved as early as possible to give me their comments and hear their concerns. They certainly know the area better than I do. So at this point, I would probably have some sort of an informal meeting at the house with some of the neighbors if they want to swing by before your next meeting. And then I can give you some input on, well, that, or they can certainly give you input. But I thought that might be a good way to go, for us as the next step. And then maybe a submission of a preliminary subdivision plan would be helpful. This way we could get into the public hearing arena and get a lot more information from your peer review engineer as well. I just don't know. I mean, I certainly don't want to take a route that requires a whole lot of time and effort by the town, but I'm certainly not, adverse to getting something started so we can get some good development.
Tom, I think you just laid out a great plan.
Sorry, Pete.
I'm sorry, sir.
No, Thomas, if I may, I think I'm a huge proponent of getting with the neighbors, whether it's at this stage, the next stage, but at some stage, because it's extremely important. It's good relations and it helps the process. But I think at this stage, I think you've heard the feedback from the board, and I do think that you could. I'm hoping you would follow up with Kristen and Daniel and kind of walk through maybe what's the best next step.
Wonderful. I'll certainly do that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other comments or questions at this point in time on this discussion, folks?
I'll say one thing that I share the discussion about the open space being a formal part of the subdivision versus it just being big backyards. I think big backyards are actually a nice addition because I can imagine those two lots being places where friends would come and play and enjoy the community just by having the big backyards to play in. I suppose I'm romanticizing how I grew up with big yards and places to play half wall. So I think the common driveway has a lot to say for it. but again, I'm romanticizing.
That's okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
All
Tom.
right.
Enjoy the rest of your night.
All right. We'll move the gavel back over to Woody, sir.
All right, everyone can hear me and see me? Very good. Next item on the agenda, old business, Doug DeShanes, Finran and Nicholson PC, and Adam True, manager of Gadsden Lane LLC. At the request of the applicant, they've asked to be moved to the next meeting, which is on April 2nd. So we will not be discussing this old business this evening. We'll see them in 2 weeks. Moving on from there, we have Seagate, 105 High Road. Request to release Lot 9 and a request for a bond reduction. The applicant is seeking to have last lot released. Building commissioner has done final inspection and staff will update the board on whether he has been granted an occupancy permit. This time, I guess I would ask the board, I guess I would ask the applicant to give us an update on where we're at here.
Sure. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Matt Gaines. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Marcus Arico, Emmer and Brooks, and I represent the 105 Seagate LLC, the applicant under this permit. So yes, as you stated, and I had submitted a letter last week, we are seeking the board to direct the building commissioner to issue the certificate of occupancy for the last unit, Unit 9 in this development. Obviously, assuming all the standard building commissioner requirements are met, which I believe we have. We just don't see any reason for this to be held up at this point, particularly under the permit. I know there were some questions maybe about some unfinished work, particularly regarding to some plantings. I can give you a quick update on that. And that with respect to the plant installation in the reclamation area, the plants have been purchased. The applicant has an agreement or a contract with their landscaper to install those plants. Obviously, we're kind of in a weather dependent situation right now and seasonal dependent situation, but the landscaper believes that he may be able, obviously if the weather holds out, may be able to plant those as soon as the next week or two. So that's good news on that front. The other item I believe has to deal with reseeding the open space after planting in the reclamation area. And again, we have, an agreement with the landscaper to do this work. Obviously, this is, again, very seasonal type of work, likely won't be done until sometime in the middle or late April, or maybe even early May, depending on the weather conditions and the soil temperature. So I think those are sort of the big items that still need to be done, and I would hardly consider those big at this point. I believe the town's still holding a little over $26,000 as part of the performance security, more than enough money to cover those items. The quotes for those two items were $2,400 and $3,600 respectively. So we're not talking about big ticket items. On the bond release issue, the items that have been completed since the last release, which was in November 2024, the seashell driveway and gravel base are done. And if the board wants, by the way, I have some photos of these things. I'm happy to share my screen, but the seashell driveway and gravel base are completed. The concrete pad with the ADA panels and entry striping has been completed. And the wetland reclamation area work is stabilized, was completed by Riverfront Landscape, and was overseen by Tom Hughes. So those are the sort of the bond release items that we are seeking. But really the priority at this point is the certificate of occupancy for the final unit. That's the main ask for tonight, because we have a buyer who's ready, willing, and able to close, and we're ready, willing, and able to close, except for the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. So that is really what we are seeking tonight.
Okay, thank you. Before I turn it over to the board for questions, Kristen and Daniel, do you have anything to add?
No, I know that the building commissioner has been talking with Gail and been out, you know, in touch with you guys this week. I didn't see Peter today, so I don't know exactly where his final checking all his boxes are.
Yeah, if I may, Ben or Maggie, I think, do you have an update on that? Did the commissioner come out today?
The commissioner came out yesterday and said we had passed.
Okay.
Yep.
But didn't actually issue the certificate of occupancy.
No, he hasn't issued it yet.
Okay. So I think he's sort of waiting for direction from this board.
Yep.
Thanks, Maggie.
Regarding, you know, the other things left on the bond estimate list, you know, we haven't seen those yet. We haven't seen the concrete pads at the sidewalk or the final seashell area for the
Sure.
parking. I think our last site visit was July. But there's certainly some review of these final things that I think it would be appropriate for staff and board members to do before, you know, before these particular items are checked off the list. And then I
Understood.
would just say, you know, as I think we all know, the conservation restriction is not finalized yet. It is finally submitted to the state. And I think we're all hoping that the state will, at this time of year, have time to get it back to us somewhat soon, although it's been a couple weeks. So we're waiting on that. I'd love to have some time to really talk through each of the open space issues, like the parking area, the signage. I know there are a lot of different documents that outline who's responsible for what in terms of, you know, 105 High versus the homeowners association versus the town after the CR. I just feel like there may be some specific questions that haven't been completely ironed out yet. At least I've been trying to get up to speed with all the documents related to this project, but I still have a few questions, and I think it might be helpful to have, you know, another walkthrough where we just go over all that with you guys. I think it was very helpful to be on the property with you all last summer. So I think that would be helpful, and you've offered that, so, you know, we'll take you up on it.
Yeah, and if I may respond to those, I think all those things that the planning director mentioned, you know, with regarding to doing the walkthrough and some of those all relate to the bond release issue. And I, you know, Maggie can obviously speak for herself if she disagrees with me, but I think we're okay on sort of maybe putting pause on the bond release request until you guys get out there and get a chance to look at those things. But none of those items that the planning director mentioned in the CR, the conservation restriction being held up at the state as well, none of those are reasons to withhold the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. That there's not really any legal grounds for the town to, and I kind of laid that out in the letter I had submitted for this hearing, that there are no real legal grounds for the town to withhold the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. But certainly on the bond, you know, fair comments on those, and yes, we can talk to, you know, Maggie can coordinate that, or Ben, and get you guys out there to do that so we can get the bond release, but not on the certificate of occupancy.
Peter, do you have any questions?
Yeah, or a couple comments as well. You know, thinking about this, and thanks, Matt, for your input tonight. I don't know how we structured who's going to be responsible for maintaining the pathways and the walkways and hold on, and the process, because as Steve Sawyer knows, that vegetation grows rapidly and quickly, and it's stuff that when you walk through it, it's really pretty painful. So I don't know, or if you could help refresh for me who's going to be responsible for it, who's going to be paying for it, and how is that going to be funded going in the future?
Absolutely. So that is all detailed quite clearly in the conservation restriction, which has been approved by the town, meaning the town planner, the Conservation Commission, and your town council as well have all blessed it in its current form, which is currently sitting in someplace at EOEEA. And the answer to your question, it's the condo association is responsible for that and funded basically through the condo fees. There will be a line item in the condo association budget for that, and they'll be, done by the condo association.
Okay, and so who's going to oversee? Please don't take this the wrong way, Matt. Who's going to oversee that?
The condos, the condo association will have a governing board, right? They'll like right now, as in every condominium that's created, the developer is sort of the sole condo board member. But soon, probably in the next few months, the developer will release her control, and the owners will elect a board of 3 members who will serve on a condo board, just as the case in all condo associations, and they will be responsible for it. That was the agreement, and that's what the town directed us to do.
Beautiful, and that is spelled out as to what the funding what the funding amount will be. Is that spelled out?
Well, I think there's not an exact dollar amount, right? Because budgets change as time goes on, but yes.
So I'm going to turn to Steve. So Steve, how often is this going to need to be groomed?
As far as for the trail, the trail, the open space, I believe they're mowing the open space. There's an area that they mow once a month. And then another area they mow once a year. There's a perimeter. The trail itself, my feeling is probably once a month they got to run through there with a weed whacker. And once you knock it back, it may, it's really just, the open woods is fine. It's just that area around the bog bridges. That's the area they got to hit. So they really don't have to go too far to hit that area. And the second bog bridge isn't as bad as that first. The first is where you have that heavy growth. So they don't have to go far from the open space field to cross that first bridge. And then once you get into the wooded area, it's not bad. It's probably just once or twice, probably twice a year they got to go out there, and that's it.
I haven't been there since we did that. Courageous cut through.
Yeah. It's a whole. Kristen was out there after the trail was cut this past summer, and I actually went out. I don't know, probably about 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it looked great. It was fine.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Thanks for now.
Okay, Larry, do you have any questions?
I just want to, So if I understand that there's 2 issues here. One is the release of lot 9 so the certificate of occupancy can be issued. And the other is the amount of the bond, what we should be holding. Is that, has town council been part of this discussion?
Yes.
And what's town council's advice, Kristen?
For which question?
Either or.
I believe town council feels that there is not a legal reason to hold the occupancy permit. That was not a condition in the special permit. She also feels like the funds are that the board could consider asking for an increase in the remaining funds in the bond to assure that all the things are completed. And I think that is, obviously when the board released the funds, a few months ago, late fall, we went through line by line, but I think at that point in time and in retrospect, there may be things that we all know need to be completed that don't actually have a line item on the bond. So I think the town council's counsel was that the board could consider asking the applicant to, responding, yes, the lot could be released, assuming the building commissioner is signed off on everything. And B, if the applicant would consider increasing what's in the bond to assure that the remaining things actually do get completed. And I just would comment that part of where we're coming from, for the sake of Maggie and Matt and Ben, is situate similar projects where the developer has completed their work and the trail was not sufficiently done, the CR was not sufficiently approved, and it's exceedingly harder to work with a homeowners association. I think that's, can be said reasonably. I'm not anticipating that's the case here. I think we're all working together well at this point with this project, but that's a comment from the perspective.
Still waiting for approval from the state though, right?
Correct. And I do want to add the other thing we haven't mentioned that's on the list is there's a baseline report that needs to be completed and signed by the grantor and the grantee of the conservation restriction at the time that the CR is conveyed. And that is also not finalized. So that's a component of work related to the conservation restriction. Town council's opinion on that work is that the baseline report cannot be completed until the wetland replication is completed, because it's documenting the conditions of the property at the time the CR is being conveyed. So there are some buckets of work related to open space that don't have a line item in the bond estimate, but we still need to assure they get done.
Okay, do we have a figure in mind for the bond amount?
I think council's advice was 50 or 60,000 could be appropriate. And I did not get detail from her on that, but I could certainly follow up if
Okay,
that
thank
would be
you.
helpful.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Larry. Scott, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got a few. First, when's the outside closing date? And by the way, I mean, the board, I think I'm speaking for the board. We wouldn't want you to lose, a sale. You worked very, very hard. Ben's done a nice job, and Maggie, to finish up the project, at least to this point. So we don't want that to happen, but I'd be interested to know how much time we actually have.
March 27th, I believe. Let me just double check that. Yeah, March 27th, a week from tomorrow.
I guess I also heard from Kristen, and I'm sure she's speaking, for Dan as well, that she's a bit uncomfortable with really what's left out there. Just maybe a meeting in short notice within the next, maybe we can have that meeting early next week, Monday or Tuesday, walk through a list so we all understand exactly, what needs to be completed, who's doing what. That would be, I think that would be a benefit to you, Matt, your clients, and I think it'd be a benefit to the town. Would that be possible?
Yeah, Maggie and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're open to certainly having folks come out there for meetings so you guys can see, the work that's been done since November, and B, see what's left to be done, and that the fact that it's really not that much left to be done.
Okay, my third question would be, it's 26,000 is what we have left in the
326,374 to be exact.
Yeah, and you have an estimate, or Ben has an estimate of $5,000 or $6,000 for, material and labor to complete the work.
Yeah, the plantings that I mentioned. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that these replication areas, I've done 100 of them. I mean, it's on the surface at the beginning, it might seem easy. You do the planting, and then, more often than not, you're continually coming back and replacing, plants that didn't take. It's over a course of, a season or two. I think probably Kristen and her team have a little bit of concern over that. Would I guess would Maggie and Ben be willing to increase the surety bond? Is that an option for you guys?
Well, I mean, I think that's what was mentioned a few minutes ago. I guess it all depends on how much. I would note, just quickly looking at the bond, as I said, there's 26,000 and change left. So that money, for example, if you go by line and what's left, one of it is, the concrete pads with ADA panels at High Roads, $4,000. That's been completed. So there's an argument that we should actually get that back. There's, I think somebody says, an entry wall in the open space. Oh, I'm sorry, the seashell driveway with gravel base, that's another $3,000. That's been done. So we'd be entitled to that back. The as-built plans is $5,000. Those are actually done. They were just submitted today, but they're done. So there's another $5,000. So between those three things alone, there's actually $12,000 of specific line items that have actually been completed. And in theory, we could request that money back and get a release of it. So that would take down the 26,000 now down to, $14,000. I'm not suggesting that. I just, again, we're not asking for that to happen, but I think there's a good argument that it could happen. My point is that if we just keep it at 26, you're pretty well covered for, I think, what's left to be done. I guess I'm not sure. I guess I need to understand what the basis would be to increase the security. Well, what's the concern that could rise above $26,000, I guess is my.
No, I think that's a fair comment. Excuse me?
Actually, Steve Sawyer, could I interject just for a second? Yeah. So number one, Matt hit it there. The only thing that's remained to be done out there, everything's 100% complete except for the replication, which has been prepped. The organic soil has been prepped. It's just a matter of seeding it. So we're down to that point. And also, as far as the concerns, Kristen had mentioned a baseline report. There was a draft baseline report already completed and submitted. And so we have that document has been created and submitted. I believe it was submitted with the CR back a month or so ago. So as far as any kind of paperwork or something to support the transition from the developer from Maggie to the homeowners association, the baseline report, that's basically it's been submitted and needs to be reviewed and finalized. So we're 90% there on the baseline report.
So I'll just respond to that. We gave you comments back, but you haven't given us comments back.
I haven't seen the comments on I have not seen the comments on the baseline
thought that
report.
most of those were resolved already, Kristen, but I apologize. I'll double check on that. That's on me then. That's on me if we're missing something in that, but I'll circle back to
And
that.
again, I just want to explain for the benefit of everybody, including the board members, that report is a documentation of the conditions of the conservation restriction area at the time that the CR gets conveyed. So it really can only be finalized with photographs, narrative, description, documentation. There's an affidavit that both the grantor and the grantee sign at the time of the conveyance of the CR. And the counsel we've received, therefore, is that can't be completed until the wetland replication area is completed. So it's just phasing it in.
Yeah.
I have no doubt we'll get there. We just want to get there with you. And I will also say we want to make sure that the homeowners association is fully ready to partner on the open space once Maggie makes that transition, which it sounds like might be in the next month or two.
No, probably a little more than that, but we're not, obviously she wants to hang on because, it'll be easier for her to get the bond money back if she's still in control, right? And there's incentive for her to get that bond money back. So, yes, some of it, the turnover somewhat might relate to that, frankly.
Matt, is this a cash bond or is this a insurance?
I believe it's a cash bond.
Cash bond.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess in theory, you know how this all works, you know, it looks like just about everything is done with the exception of the replication area and maybe a couple of other things. But in reality, there's always more, right, to what the requirements of the subdivision and the conditions, you know, are. And like, for example, you know, the as-built, you say it's done, right?
Yep.
Well, it really can't be done until the replication area is done, right?
That really the as-built didn't, you know, it picked up the trail location, picked up, you know, I don't know if that's a requirement of the as-built. It's just landscaped area. The specific portions of the as-built related to the driveway, grading, drainage, the drainage system, sewer systems, water systems, most of the infrastructures that supported the building, the septic locations.
Yeah.
And then in the open space, it showed the bog, you know, basically the route of the bog bridges in the trail network. As
Yeah,
far
to,
as
to Steve's point, the special permit, when it references, you know, what the as-built is to include, it's really more, I guess, improvement structures, not plantings. It talks about, you know, the buildings, the stormwater management facilities, the roadway edges, locations and inverts of the required utilities and drainage, and location of underground utilities. So I don't, it's not going to that granular detail showing where each tree and plantings are. That's not required on the as-built.
It's
Okay,
maybe a
I guess my
parallel.
last comment would be in closing, it would be, we, at least I am, very confident that, you know, Steve, Maggie and Ben will, complete everything that they need to complete. I think we're gonna need a season, or so, you know, you may not get your, you know, surety bond, or bond back until after the wetlands, is accepted, I think, by conservation. But, you know, if you were willing to meet, you know, with Kristen and Daniel, you know, staff, you know, prior to closing, hopefully Monday or Tuesday, the 27th is coming fast. And if you were willing to consider and offering to maybe, you know, increase your bond, you know, maybe not to $50,000 or $60,000, but to someplace, you know, in the middle, you know, it would go a long way with the town.
Yeah, so what I would suggest perhaps is that the town, the board rather, vote to approve tonight the issuance of the last certificate of occupancy and to direct the building commissioner to issue that. As Kristen explained, you know, town council has opined that there is no legal leg for the town to stand on to withhold that, and that can't be tied to increasing the security or anything else, so that really needs to be issued and this should be issued. As far as, you know, all the other issues, the bond amount, whether it frankly, a good argument could be made that it should decrease based upon the work, or obviously maybe you're thinking it should increase. I suggest that we punt on that question for the evening and kick that can down the road a little bit to allow the town to meet maybe as soon as next week, but, you know, obviously very soon. I don't know what everybody's schedule is, but certainly as soon as possible for the town to come out there to meet, for the parties to talk and get a better sense of, okay, what's left to do and what are those costs? And then we can kind of reconvene once there's been a little bit more, you know, meeting of the minds at the actual site. So we know, you know, what is a reasonable dollar amount. Because I don't think we can pin that number right now.
Matt, I think that is an excellent suggestion. And it might take a couple weeks to get that number, but I think your recommendation, and if Woody, if you are of the mindset to have the phase one, if you will, the certificate of occupancy released, I think that would make good sense. Then I think, you know, just work through these other issues as they need to be addressed. And I'll just say, you know, unfortunately, Matt, we went through one of these and it was very difficult, and it was very time consuming. And so we want to make sure that we just don't step into another situation where the issues and concerns aren't addressed. And I think they're all going to be addressed. Scott has said it, and we've seen it. So there you have it.
I think that would be acceptable. I think that a meeting is very important in getting this squared away, because we don't want this to drag out for years.
No, absolutely not. So I mean, yeah, I think Maggie and Ben can reach out to, should they coordinate the meeting through you, Kristen, or?
Yeah,
Okay,
with the board, I mean, generally when an as-built is submitted, which it just was a
Yeah.
couple hours ago, the board likes to do another site visit and, our peer review will look at and all that.
okay.
But for this particular meeting, I'm asking the board members, would you like to do a walk sooner than later on the property? Set that up
I think that would
within
help.
a few weeks.
I think that would help with what our discussion is. So, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel the same.
Are you saying have a sidewalk prior to the issuance of, or approving, Peter to issue the
No.
occupancy permit?
No, I
No.
wasn't suggesting that.
Okay.
No, I would entertain a motion to approve the occupancy, to allow the occupancy.
You would like that. You can have that, sir. There's your motion.
And a second.
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Pete,
Sure.
Larry,
Yep.
Scott,
Yes.
and Steve, how do you feel?
I think it's good as long as the building commissioner gets the word.
And I vote yes as well.
Thank
So
you.
I encourage you to reach out to Kristen tomorrow, and we'll set up a time and date for a site walk. And I encourage everyone on the board, especially administration, but people on the board, to attend as well, so we can all come to a consensus here as to where we're at, what needs to be done, and we can move on.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
so-
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone. All right. Moving on to the agenda. Liaison reports. Larry, we have CBA?
Yeah, the ZBA is meeting tomorrow night, their regular monthly meeting. Got two continued public hearings on the agenda, I think both of which I've reported on in the past. Variance applications for 11 and 15 Sunset Drive, and then a special permit finding for 80 Northern Boulevard to raise an existing dwelling and to build a new single-family home. And that is it.
Okay. Conservation Commission, that would be myself. Conservation met last night. I'm trying to pull my notes up here. Bear with me. Two things that pertain to us were that we've seen before. One was the Newbury landfill. The applicant was there to submit moving of the shooting range, if anyone does recall. So we had a discussion on that. And there's going to be a further meeting to hash that out as to location, and I'll have an update on that in the future. The second was the Sunset Club. They submitted an amendment to the current OOC for a pavilion, and there was some discussion, and there weren't dimensions on the pavilion other than the footprint, and there was some conversation about water runoff and things of that nature. And they are going to get some more information to the Conservation Commission, and we're going to see them at the next meeting. So we're also going to see if Kristen can add to this as well, but we're also going to be seeing the Sunset Club for an extension, maybe next meeting or the meeting after. So
Yeah, actually, both those projects, it's, should really be coming to the board any day, if not have come already. The town's project at the landfill on Boston Road is a modification to the site plan that was already approved by the board. But yeah, the primary question with moving the shooting range on is to allow the placement of the solar panels to work on that site. So it really is the town's project. It's all related to sort of finally getting that effort to move forward in terms of getting those solar panels up and running. So that is something that would, assuming, or if it is approved by the Conservation Commission, I think it would likely be seen as a minor modification for the planning board. So we'll keep you posted on that. Sunset Club, Daniel and I had a short meeting with the applicant and suggested those modifications go hand in hand in terms of their proposal to add the pavilion. They have never closed out their project with the planning board, so but it does expire soon, so that request for an extension does need to come back to the planning board soon. So that I'm not sure when that is, but probably the next meeting, if not the following meeting.
And that concludes my Conservation Commission report, and we'll move on to MVPC.
Yeah, we haven't, well, there was one meeting of the sort of active transportation that Dan was able to sit in on today. I don't know if that's want to give that quick, interesting tidbit?
Sure. So we met with the Merrimack Valley Planning, and they discussed transportation. There's a little group that meets basically every month to discuss transportation projects. And so what was discussed is we're still trying to move forward on the Route 110 corridor and where it meets Route 1. That's on their it's on their list basically of projects to work on for Newbury. Another one that's really quite fascinating and I hope takes some ground is they're putting together an RFP to basically get a ferry on the Merrimack River to go between several communities. Haverhill, Amesbury, and Newburyport are going to be the nodes in the beginning. So that was very cool. Hopefully that comes off. Also, as another plug, separate from MVPC is the Affordable Housing Board, Trust Fund Board informational meets again tomorrow through CHAPA. It's 12 to 1:30, just making that plug. I know Kristen had sent an email out to you guys. So if you can make it, it'd be great. And Kristen, if I've forgotten anything, please.
No, I would just say, aren't the ferries going to be EV? They're going to
Yeah,
be
so they're
electric
yep. So that was one of the things. They're going to be electric ferries,
Kind of
and
interesting.
one of the biggest issues is also getting conduits on the docks. So that's all part of it.
So we were imagining how cool it would be if there could be a ferry coming down the Merrimack from Amesbury into Newburyport and all the way out to Steve Mansion's house on Plum Island. Because I would ride that ferry, Steve.
I'm going to withhold comment.
Well, I mean, Steve.
Gonna
you
need a
have to-
ferry one day.
Hopefully you'll be romanticizing about the barbecue that you're gonna need to have in your backyard, Steve.
I'm on Plum Island. Being on Plum Island, my backyard is small. But the ferry will be docking in Newburyport, I think. That's the northern end of the island.
Yep, that was one of the nodes discussed.
We'll have a little electric bike to get on down to. That's all I have, Woody.
Okay, thank you. And that leads us to the plans report.
Oh, no, that was my planner's report.
Yeah, that was it.
We compiled it all into one. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
The only other thing I see on the agenda is meeting minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the March 5th, 2025 meeting minutes? Hearing nothing, I'll assume that was a yes. Does anyone have any edits or comments on the March 5th meeting minutes?
No comments.
Okay. And entertain a motion to approve the March 5th meeting minutes, 2025?
Make that motion.
Second? Do I have a second?
Well, I'm abstaining because I wasn't at the meeting, so
Okay,
Oh, all right, Larry.
so that's a second for Pete.
Yes,
Roll call vote. Pete,
yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Steve, how do you feel?
Well, I don't vote, so I'll just say present.
And I vote yes as well. So meeting minutes approved. And seeing nothing else on the agenda, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. If no one else has any other comments.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Very good. Roll call vote. Pete,
Yes, sir.
Larry,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Steve. and
I don't want to
vote
talk
yes as
about
well.
EVs anymore, so present.
Very good. Have a good night, everyone. And
All
thank
right,
you.
thanks.
for a great
Thanks,
meeting.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.